If you're trying to better understand yourself and the impact you have on others as a gaslighter, you are in the right place. Here we explore the link between gaslighting and perfectionism. Now, gaslighting, as we know, is when someone manipulates another person into doubting their own reality, what they remember, what they feel, what they experienced. And often, when we talk about gaslighting, it's easy to picture someone being cruel or intentionally harmful. But what if, for some people, it's less about power for the sake of power and more about protecting their self-image? What if it comes from perfectionism? Because here's the thing, perfectionism isn't just about wanting to do well or be organized. It's about holding yourself to these unrealistic, often unachievable standards. It's believing that if you're not perfect, you've somehow failed. And when that mindset takes over, it can cause real problems, not just for you, but for the people around you too. Let's say you have this deep need to be seen as someone who never makes mistakes, someone who's always on top of things, always right. That kind of pressure can make it incredibly hard to admit when something's gone wrong. Instead of saying, "Yeah, I slipped up there," you might start changing the story a little. You might downplay what happened, twist some facts, or even make someone else question their memory of the situation. And suddenly, without really meaning to, you've stepped into gaslighting. What's actually going on in those moments is you're trying to protect an idealized version of yourself. You're trying to avoid the discomfort of being seen as imperfect. Because for many perfectionists, imperfection doesn't feel like a simple mistake, it feels like failure, or worse, rejection. The fear of being exposed or judged can be so overwhelming that you start defending yourself in ways that distort the truth. And gaslighting becomes the shield you hold up so you don't have to face the shame of being wrong. Now think about it. Where did this need for perfection come from? Was it something you picked up in childhood? Maybe you were praised for being the good one, the clever one, the one who got things right. Or maybe you were criticized harshly when you slipped up. Maybe it's come from society, this constant pressure to look polished, act confidently, never show weakness. Wherever it started, perfectionism plants this idea that if people saw the real you, flaws and all, they might not accept you. So what do? You start trying to manage how people see you. You control the narrative. And when someone calls you out or challenges you, it feels like a threat. Not just to your ego, but to your entire sense of self. That's when gaslighting can creep in. Not necessarily because you want to deceive someone, but because you're trying to maintain control over how you're perceived. It's a way to protect yourself from the fear of being judged, rejected, or even disliked. But here's the truth, none of us is perfect. Not one of us. And the more we chase perfection, the further we get from being truly authentic, not just with others, but with ourselves too. When we gaslight to maintain a flawless image, we actually miss the chance to grow, to connect, and to be fully seen and loved for who we really are. So how do we change that? It starts with learning to accept imperfection. Really sitting with the fact that being human means getting it wrong sometimes. It means saying, "I was wrong," or "I didn't handle that well," and trusting that it doesn't make you unworthy. In fact, those moments, when we are honest and vulnerable, they are the ones that build real trust and connection with others. One of the most powerful tools you can use here is self-compassion. Instead of beating yourself up for not being perfect, try showing yourself a bit of kindness. Say to yourself, "It's okay that I got that wrong, I'm learning." Or, "It's all right to not have it all together." That small shift helps take the pressure off. It creates space for honesty, for growth, and for real connection. And start noticing when you feel that urge to defend yourself or reshape the story. Ask yourself, am I doing this to protect my image? Am I afraid of how I'll be seen? If the answer is yes, pause. Breathe, and try to respond with honesty instead of control. Also, try moving away from relying on external validation. Perfectionists often get caught up in what other people think of them. But when you start seeking approval from within, from knowing that you're doing your best, from learning, from showing up authentically, you don't need to manipulate the truth to feel safe. You get to show up, flaws and all, and still feel worthy. Gaslighting might seem like it's about protecting yourself, but in the long run, it causes damage. It erodes trust. It confuses people. And it pushes the real you further and further away from the surface. But when you start shifting from perfectionism to self-acceptance, you give yourself and others permission to be real. And that's where the good stuff happens, in real, honest, imperfect connection. So if you've recognized any of this in yourself today, take a moment to reflect. Be kind to yourself. And remember that the goal isn't to be flawless. It's to be honest. It's to be growing. It's to be human. In our next session, we'll be looking at how cultural norms and external pressures influence gaslighting behavior. Because sometimes, it's not just our personal stuff, we are also shaped by the world we live in. But for now, just sit with this. You're doing the work. And that takes courage.